This is Battleground PA, a PennLive podcast discussing the issues that matter to Pennsylvanians and documenting the events in the Keystone State and beyond that could shape how you vote in the 2024 elections.
Well, greetings again, everyone. This is Joyce Davis. I'm PennLive's Outreach and Opinion Editor, and this is Battleground PA. Just so you know, you can also, not only on Spotify or on all these apps, but you can also watch us, in case you don't know, on YouTube. And we do also send it to our Facebook page on PennLive. So just so you'll know that. But today, there's nothing else to talk about except the upcoming historic, monumental debate between a former president and a sitting president. This is one very big deal. Am I right, Jeffrey Lord?
You are right. You are right. And the one thing that I would say to start us off, when the first Kennedy-Nixon debate was in 1960, and I was in the fourth grade, and I sort of vaguely remember watching it with my political parents. But by the time I got to Franklin and Marshall, and it was a government major, my government professor, every single year for the incoming government majors, he would have them sit down and he would play the first 15 minutes of this debate, of the Kennedy-Nixon debate, audio only. Then he would go back, rewind it, and they would watch the whole thing as it appeared on black and white television in the day. And the follow-up was that in the day, those people who had heard it on radio thought Nixon won. The people who saw it on television thought Kennedy won. And the lesson ever after for candidates is that, a single thing or moment in one of these televised debates, unscripted though it may be, can really turn the tide. And in Nixon's case, he refused television makeup. And of course, unfortunately, he had a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah.
He chose to wear a gray suit, and the background was sort of gray. So we blended in, and it didn't look all that great. JFK, on the other hand, made a point of getting a suntan. He took the television makeup, and he wore a very dark, navy or black suit. Looked perfect on television. So, in essence...
your point is well made. It's a lot of it is show business these days for television, and people are going to be watching on television. But Rogette, let's bring our trusted Democratic analyst into this conversation. How are you today, Rogette?
I'm good. I'm very excited. Can I do a quick plug? Because I'm actually organizing a debate watch party.
Go ahead.
At the Harrisburg Midtown Arts Center, which is at 1110 North 3rd Street in Harrisburg, and Governor Shapiro and Lieutenant Governor is coming. So I'm very, very excited. So I just want to plug that. It just goes to show how important Pennsylvania Democrats are taking this first debate, that, again, the governor is coming to this. So.
Well, this is an important debate. There's no doubt about it. We are now fully headed into a serious election season, right, for our next president. So because you guys think about this a lot, you do reflect and can communicate constituencies, what your folks are thinking and what they want. So I'm going to really let you hold forth as you look ahead. What, Jeffrey, are you looking for your presidential candidate to say? How do you expect him to look and act? Let's start with number one. What do you expect that he's going to want to talk about? Maybe the top three things.
Immigration, the economy, and then, foreign policy, Ukraine, and that sort of thing. But I think, normally, and you've heard me say this, the economy is generally the top issue in a presidential election. This time around, I do think it's getting a lot of competition with the illegal immigration situation and the problems that have resulted from that. So I think that that's a deal. And I must say, I'm somewhat amused when I listen to my friend Rogette talk about her watch party, and she's going to have Governor Shapiro there. I'd be willing to bet that if you could read the silent minds of the Democratic attendees, they would be wishing that it were Governor Shapiro on that stage with Donald Trump and not Joe Biden.
All right. Rogette, why don't you tell us? Jeffrey's given us his top three. What do you think the top three things people are going to want, our Democrats are going to want Biden to talk about?
Well, I definitely agree with immigration, especially what the president just recently did, the economy as well. I attended an event with Dr. Joe Biden this past Sunday, and obviously it was about abortion rights, reproductive rights, which are still legal in Pennsylvania. And women are going to be a key constituent group here in Pennsylvania, and that's a huge issue for Democrats. So and we just celebrated yesterday the anniversary of the Dobbs decision. So I have no doubt that reproductive rights, abortion rights are going to be part of the debate as well. I was a little surprised, and I don't know if you were too, Jeffrey, on how the setup's going to be different. No opening remarks. They're going to go right into the questions. Former President Trump will give the first closing remarks. But I thought that was interesting, maybe so they can get more questions in, because usually they have a chance to do. And I wonder with Trump, though, because he is known for being more of a showman. He likes to play to the audience, even though
he's an entertainer. That's how he got his jobs, right?
I'm surprised he agreed to no opening remarks. Something else I'm surprised he agreed to, there's no audience. And maybe they did that so they don't have to worry about going and for either side, but it's going to be different.
One of the things.
Tell me what you think of the format. How is that sitting with you?
The format, yeah, call me cynical, but I don't think that the format at any of these things makes any particular difference. I mean, I bet if you took a poll of Americans now, they couldn't tell you what the format was 4 years ago or 4 years before that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What they remember is if there is some sort of telegenic screw up or dramatic moment. The other, I talked about the Kennedy-Nixon thing. The other one that I think was memorable in the day that made an impact in the New Hampshire Republican primary in 1980, the New Hampshire union leader held a debate, televised debate, with then former Governor Reagan and former Ambassador George H.W. Bush. And they were seated at a table, each had these microphones in front of them. And Reagan was contributing to the debate money-wise and all this sort of thing. But there were other candidates. That included Senator Howard Baker, Senator Bob Dole, Congressman John Anderson. I think I'm leaving a couple people out. And the newspaper was not going to allow them to appear in the debate. So very interestingly, they all clustered together and showed up on the set of the debate with the live television cameras running. And Reagan, seeing this, said, well, let's let them in or whatever. And Bush said nothing. And the debater, the moderator, his name was John Breen with a B, B-R-E-E-N, said no, we wasn't going to do that. And Reagan started to protest. And the guy said, shut off Governor Reagan's microphone. And Reagan instantly got angry, grabbed the microphone in a scene out of an old Spencer Tracy movie, I think, stood up and said, I paid for this microphone, Mr. Green. He called him Mr. Green instead of Breen, but close enough. And Bush just sat there. Well, as it played out, that turned out to be a devastating moment for the Bush campaign. He never really recovered. He lost the New Hampshire primary, and we know the rest of the story. But my point is, as with the Kennedy-Nixon thing, things that happen in these debates during a televised situation can make a real impact, and you never really know going in what that's going to be.
You really don't. You really don't know what's going to happen. The only thing I will say about this is that we know former President Trump is a television, star. I mean, that right. He's in front of the camera. That's when he comes to life. Whether there's an audience or not, except one issue here, and that is cutting off the mic. Because if they decide that they're going to cut him off, how do you think that's going to? I expect he's going to want to hold forth a lot, and when he gets cut off, Rogette, what do you think that's going to do to him or to Biden, who might get cut off?
I think he will play it up because, as you said, he is an actor. So I think he'll play it up and probably say afterwards, "They cut me off. They don't want my voices heard. Let's take a mirror back." I think he'll be typical Trump, and people like me will be, "Oh, there he goes again," and his other people will be like, "Yeah." So I think I'm gonna have to see, what the people in the middle think. But we are making history, and correct me if I'm wrong, but has there ever been a time we've had a current and former president debating each other?
Yeah.
So that is something, especially when the former president was just convicted of 34 counts. And I'm curious to see how President Biden is going to. I'm not saying it's going to be a huge part of his performance, don't get me wrong, but I'll be very surprised if that doesn't come up in some way, shape, or form. Especially, one of a big theme of his campaign is, democracy. We have to save democracy, which takes us back to January 6th. So, all of that's going to have to come up in some way, shape, or form as well.
Okay. So what, all right, you guys have talked to us about what you think you would like and the constituencies would like to hear. And the first thing you talked about was immigration, but you're at different points of view on this immigration thing. I heard Rogette saying, especially considering what the president just did. I mean, he has really revved up this immigration debate because he's made it possible for people who had no hope to now become citizens. Rogette, is he going to really want to play that up, I think, during this? And
yes, I have no doubt. I have no doubt.
All right.
We are a nation of immigrants. The Democrat Party always says and pushes that. But we also have been for a pathway to citizenship. And he's not just talking that, he acted on it. So I think that's going to definitely be brought up. This is a chance for the president to tell the American people what he has done over the past 4 years. A lot of people say, "What have you done?" Well, this is his chance to tell that, and that what he did with immigration is going to affect so many Americans that have lived and paid into our system. So I can't see that not being brought up.
Go ahead, Jeffrey. Go ahead.
The downside of this is that Americans have been seeing here all of these horrific tales about illegals in this country who don't belong in this country, raping and murdering teenage and young women, etc., thrusting these situations into the national spotlight, with President Trump giving a call to the mother of the last one who was killed here. That kind of thing is, I think, going to play a real role in all this. And there's one other thing, and this is not strictly about immigration, and I've written something about it today, and it made news in the last couple days when Caroline Levitt, the Trump spokesperson, was cut off and shut down by the CNN anchor of the moment, Casey Hunt, I believe her name is. And I would suggest that the fact that Donald Trump accepted this CNN debate, knowing full well that he is not well liked over there, sets him up in a sort of David versus Goliath situation where he's not only debating Joe Biden and President Biden, he's debating Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, both of whom I know, both of whom are lovely people, but both of whom are decided liberals. And I can't imagine a situation where President Trump is not at some point going to draw attention to that with whatever questions they may have.
And the spin begins.
And the what?
I said, and the spin begins.
That's it.
Well, that's what it's about. But Jeffrey, you also you just penned an op-ed talking about how CNN you think is out to get foreign rendition. So why would he consent to being on a debate with CNN?
Because to something that you said earlier, he's a television star.
Okay.
And I think he knows that 3 against 1 is good television. That that would work in his favor, and that not only his supporters, but you might get a lot of independent people out there saying, I don't really think that was fair of these people. So I think he's taking it from that aspect, that yes, better that than a situation where everybody says, just sort of agrees all the time.
Well, that's true. But I will tell you this: the points you guys made about this being historic and this, people may not have been paying attention till now, but
Right.
this is going to, anybody who has any chance of voting, thinking they're going to vote, are going to be watching this. I'm thinking,
I mean,
right?
I think so. I mean, although I'm just always skeptical, I generally think that American presidential elections don't really kick off until October. And
Well,
what's the traditional story that they don't really begin until after the World Series?
yeah,
So
unless
I'm
there's an
still
event
somewhat of
like
that
this.
mindset.
Yeah, unless there's a big event like this one.
Right.
And this could really catapult them. I mean, it could really galvanize in either candidate
Yeah.
toward the finish line. I mean, right now. And yet, we do still have a long ways to go with a lot of things, with a world in turmoil. With a
Yes.
world in turmoil. And this is not likely to be the only debate. Am I right? I don't recall it. Have
Yeah.
others been scheduled yet? What's
Is there another one booked for September?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that one, Rogette. I haven't been keeping up with all the debate schedules. It's not going to be a CNN debate, I'm sure.
But Jeffrey's correct. There's one other debate schedule, and I believe that one's with ABC.
Okay, maybe you'll like ABC a little bit better than CNN. At any rate, all right. We talked about immigration. We talked about immigration. We talked about, but let's talk about women. And
Yes,
I'm
I'm
wondering,
sorry. It's going to be September 10th. And it is
September 10th. All right. Okay, should look that up first. But let's talk about the women vote, because I think that is an important vote. Now, Rochelle is thinking this abortion thing is going to end, the attacks on contraception are going to galvanize women to get out and perhaps vote against Trump. But you're thinking, Jeffrey, that no, there might not be judging that right. Tell us how you think Trump will bring in women.
Well, I think first of all, I think the economy, just in general, as we talked about, um, that really does appear, and for the obvious reason that women who are mothers, who are the grocery shoppers in the family, who are getting a dozen eggs every week, inflation plays a real role in the calculus of what they're doing. The second thing I would say is I think there's an automatic assumption that women out there are overwhelmingly pro-choice, and I would suggest, having met my fair share of women who are decidedly pro-life, that it's not the unanimity that I think people believe. It's very interesting. I think in American politics, we see this with women, we see this with African Americans, with Latinos. The thought is that, well, because they're X, they're automatically for the Democrat in the equation, and yet people are astonished when suddenly they realize that polls are showing that there's a surge with black men, for example, who are pro-Trump, or that there's a surge with this or that group who's thought to be leaning in one direction just automatically. It doesn't work like that. And when you have some event out there happen that can affect the whole thing, it can affect people regardless of their color or gender. And I just don't think we're anywhere close to figuring out how that's going to work. As I say, come the middle of October, I'd be interested to see the polling on this. But
Well, the truth is, I was going back. We can talk about polls a little bit, and I was going back to look at what the polls said in the previous elections. And guess who was slated to win when it was Hillary and Trump? All the polls.
my favorite tale of that, Joyce, was the New York Times on Election Day in 2016 had a poll that said it was an 85% certainty that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election.
Yeah.
And I just thought, reaching back long before we were around on this planet to the polls in 1948 that all said Thomas E. Dewey was going to be the next president. And I don't know if you're aware of this. A little geek that I was when I was growing up, I would always go to the local library and read through the old Life magazine issues and all that. And of course, this was before I was around. But my favorite of this was Life had a big picture of Governor Dewey and his wife on the San Francisco ferry crossing to Oakland or something like that. And the caption was, the next president of the United States crosses San Francisco Bay.
There you go.
They got
There
to
you go.
election night and oops.
Yep. So we can't count any chickens before those chickens actually hatch.
That's right.
Right? Be they Democrat or Republican chickens. So, and again, let's the third issue. I think you all agreed the third issue, the economy. Is that right? Are you guys wanting them to hold forth at least on that?
Oh,
And
it
is
has
that
to
really
be.
the cost of living thing we're talking about, or is it something else?
I think it's the issues we just spoke about ties into the economy. You know, when you talk about abortion, it's not just abortion, it's reproductive rights, it's access to birth control, it's women's health care, which obviously ties into the economy. Everything we're talking about, immigration impacts the economy. I mean, everything ties into the economy. So
But I guess the issue that you think, Jeffrey, is still on people's mind is that there's not enough being done to lower inflation. Is that what you're seeing? And is that
Right.
how Trump is going to
I
hammer
mean,
it?
just in my experience, inflation is always an issue unless it's not there, unless you know it isn't happening. But certainly, as a veteran of 1980, man, they tied together. Republicans were smart enough to tie together the inflation rate with the unemployment rate, and they called it the misery index. And boy, did they tag that to Jimmy Carter unbelievably. And of course, he lost 44 states to Ronald Reagan. So there you go.
No, there you go. Because these debates have a way of also there being quips that can kind of summarize and galvanize people. So we've got to look for something like the misery index, right? That could come out of it.
And it's little things. And as I say, keep a careful eye on the television screen and what you're seeing. I mean, just to me, offhand, one of the problems potentially that could surface for the Biden camp is, of course, his age and his ability, and he's got to stand there for 90 minutes. And if the television camera catches anything, uncertainty in his face, or I mean, this is the problem with television. It can pick up on something, and it could be a small thing, but then you're paying for it forever and a day politically.
Do you realize you're helping the president out, though? I don't think Republicans realize you have lowered the bar so low.
That's what they did for the State of the Union too.
Yes, the ants would be able to cross.
Even old Joyce could do that.
Well, what I like about this is
to
that
be underestimated, and you're underestimating the president by lowering the bar that low. I mean, I'm expecting Trump to get up there, and he's a bad relationship. He's the ex that's going to remind us why we move forward, and we don't want to go back. To that bad.
Just quit something there, Jeffrey. He's the ex we don't want to go back to. Oh, women will get that one.
Well, I just
on him again.
I don't know. I think it will be very interesting, and he will. We will see what he says and how he responds, and all of that, and what Joe Biden says or doesn't say. And, this is a situation where the television cameras can be merciless.
Yeah.
Here.
But honestly, she's right. They could be merciless on both of them because, I mean, Trump is also a similar age, and he also has been known to simply ramble or forget lines or mix up names and all that. I happen to think a lot of this stuff is overblown because anyone who's on camera, be it Trump or the president, as much as they are, is bound to slip up a lot. I mean, you're doing so much, but the same camera that's on Biden will also be on Trump, and people will be judging them both based on how they look. My concern is, how do we really want the nastiness again on stage? Or do we want, this is for Americans to decide. Do you really want people just attacking each other and being mean and nasty? Or do you want two logical, sensible statesmen debating things that will impact not only our lives, but the lives of the next generation? Is that what we think Americans want? Rational, sensible statesmen.
Well, sure. I mean, in theory, that's what everybody wants, but in practical terms, they're watching you know, the
They're
American
watching for the show.
the American television audience is not dumb. They're very, very sophisticated. They watching television in this day and age. They're watching computers and social media, or their kids are watching it and all of this kind of thing. So they're going to have an eye on all of this, and in their own mind's eye, they'll be making a comparison between the two. And the thing that I always find somewhat amusing, it's not what they say, it's how they look. And
Uh-huh.
that's an
Totally.
important, that just is a fact of life.
Yep, yep. And you
Image is
honest,
important. Yes, I definitely can't deny that. But I guess where we disagree is I don't see where Trump has this such great, fabulous image. Because when you look at a person, it's not just the physicality, which again, I don't see the great image of Trump, but people are also going to be thinking of everything that's been in the news with them. Remember, it's also behavior, it's tone, it's going to be body language, how you use your hands. Is he going to be pointing? Blah, blah, blah. So all of that goes into image.
Well, one of the things that I'm sort of amused at here, and I would be interested to see how this plays out, is President Trump is asking that they both be drug tested before
ah,
they do this debate. And I thought, well, that's interesting because, of course, the allegation is out there that he was, as Sean Hannity says, jacked up when he gave his State of the Union message and was pretty well shouting it out.
well,
Um,
I remember there was a former president, one of the best we ever had, President Kennedy, who was jacked up a lot because he had back problems, right?
Yes, yes. And
And
who knew at the time?
right.
Doctor,
So I mean,
Joyce,
again,
one quick aside, a
yeah.
friend gave me a gift. It's about a 6-disc set, and it's Jackie Kennedy talking in March of 1964 to the historian Arthur Schlesinger. And one of the things she refers there, and I remember this woman, Dr. Janet Travell, and she would give him these injections in his
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
which tended to
yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
him feel good and all of that kind of thing. And I thought, wow, I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but it's particularly interesting to hear it in her own voice.
Well, the truth is, we've had, we can look back in history and see that we've had presidents who were older, wiser, and also those who may not have been physically as capable as others, but still were great presidents. So, I mean, our history just proves and I'm sure Americans have to take that into consideration too when they look at our current candidates. So, but Jeffrey, where are you going to watch the debates? What are you got a party, a wild party going on there?
No, and I'll tell you something about this, Joyce. Back there in what would this be? 1984.
Are you forgetting things, Jeffrey? It's your mind. I'm just wondering. It's just
I had to think
because
whether
I'm
it was
still
80 or
shocked.
84. Uh, but I was in the Reagan Bush campaign. And so, therefore, I was invited to the debate in Philadelphia between then Vice President Bush and the Democratic nominee, Congresswoman Geraldine Ferraro.
Ah,
And
yes.
I was all excited about this. So they gave me a good seat and all of this kind of stuff. So I sit there in the auditorium and listen to it. It's amazing. It was fascinating. I'm taking it all in, looking at their mannerisms and all of this sort of stuff. And the press was back in a sort of high rise situation in a balcony, etc. So I thought, well, Bush did fabulous. This was great. I get out and I started listening to the television, and they're talking about how well Congresswoman Ferraro did and all that kind of thing. The lesson to me was, if you can avoid it, don't sit in person in one of these debates. Watch
Ah,
it on television
on
so that
TV.
you see what everybody else in America is seeing. I mean, Rogette's party is a case in point. I think they are far better off there than they are if they all had seats to this debate, so
And
that
of
they
course,
can
people will be
watch it.
tweeting and commenting all through the debate. There'll be a lot of
Yes.
social media interaction. So, well, it is an exciting time. There is no doubt about it. It is an exciting time. Rogette, we wish you the best and say hello to our governor for us and all those big wigs that will be there. And invite them. They should join us for one of our Battleground PA podcasts coming up. We then will analyze our next one, just how well each side did. And we'll be trying to figure out who won the first 2024 debate. All right, I will see you guys next week, and happy debate watching until then.